Hey, this is Christine, and I'm going to show you today some of my techniques for applying single fold binding to a quilt project. Um, if you've never done binding before, this is going to be excellent for beginners. I have some really easy ways of doing this, and I'm going to share them with you. So first of all, you would need to cut enough strips for your binding. I cut them 1.25 inches wide. And you need enough to go around the quilt, the perimeter of the quilt, and adding about 10 to 12 inches. The next step is to join these strips together. The traditional way is to do them like this on the bias. You would sew your strips this way, and you would trim the edge off and then open them up and press them. And they would look like this. And that's perfectly fine, but I'm going to show you a much easier method. And that is to just take your strips and join them end to end. Much like your piece of quilt with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You would just press your seams open, and there literally isn't any bulk when you do this. And one good reason why is that it really matters what thread that you use for this. It makes all the difference. My thread of choice is Signature 60 weight cotton. It's 3-ply, nice and strong, beautiful in the seams. It sinks right in, and it doesn't create any bulk in your seams at all. So that's the magic of this quilt binding. I'll show you another quick tip here on this spool. Is what I like about it. It has this little snap bottom, so it can catch your thread tail, and it just snaps right in there and keeps you nice and organized. And as you can see, the seam is just beautiful. Okay, so let's get started. So I like to leave the excess batting and backing around the edge of the quilt before instead of, a lot of people trim it off. I don't do that. A reason for that is kind of gives you a little extra to hang on to as you're sewing, and also it stabilizes the edge from getting distorted. So when I apply binding, I like to use I use a patchwork foot, which gives me a 1/4 inch from the edge, 1/4 inch in from the edge. I have an automatic measurement. I start sewing the binding on, leaving this is about a 6-inch tail from the edge. You can see I've got 6 inches here. Okay, so I've got 3 corners already done on the quilt, and I'm going to show you how to miter the corners. Sew to the edge here. Alrighty, before I get to the very bottom, I'm going to put a pin in to stop myself at a 1/4 inch. This pin is just a marker. Put it in right there, where it's really hanging off the edge and I can see it beyond the foot. I'm going to go ahead and sew down to that pin, taking my time, sewing slowly. I hand walk the needle if I have to, and once I get up to that pin, I pull it out, and I lift my presser foot, kind of angle the quilt a little bit, and I use my reverse button and just sew my way out of it. So back my way out of here, and it looks like this. Just like that. Okay, so the next step to turning this corner is to bring the strip up so that I'm looking at the right side, and I bring it up so that it's it's a 90-degree angle from the stitch line and from this edge of the quilt. And then I bring this back down, back over. And there's my mitered corner right there. So to figure out where to plant your needle to finish sewing this along the edge, I like to use this stitching line right here as a guide. And what I will do is I will put a pin right in that stitching line through all these layers to mark them so that I know where I'm going to plant that needle. And it looks like that. And I'm not going to sew over this pin, but it's marking. So using the edge of my patchwork foot and where this needle is, that's where I can determine exactly where this needle needs to go into the quilt. And I will plant the needle right there, right on the stitching line, 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I take a few tight stitches just to secure the corner, and then I will sew down from here. Now this is the last corner that I've mitered, so I'm going to stop sewing about halfway and I will show you how to join the ends together. Oh, I'm going to bring my stitch length back up. Okay. Leave myself about 5-6 inches so that I can join these ends together. And that looks pretty good. And I do the same thing as the corners. I lift my presser foot and I'm just going to use my reverse button and back out of this. Okay. So I'm just joining these end to end, and it is extremely simple, super simple and easy. One of the things about piecing binding this way is that you can get creative with it. You can make a nice pieced binding edge, and I've done that. Looks almost like a candy cane. Okay, so I just fold these pieces together, leaving a tiny gap in the middle, and I finger crease them so that I know where they are. I will go on the back and just kind of pinch the quilt a little out of the way with these little clips. Makes it easier to manage this. And I just hold these together. You can mark them with a pin if you like. Really not necessary. Just hold them together and open them up. And then I will be stitching right on the creases. And I get a thread here. I just plant my needle right into the edge. My little thread out of the way. Of course, when you're taping, nothing wants to cooperate. Okay, I think we're good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch on that fold line. I can see it, but you probably can't. And I'm going to go ahead and trim the thread away. Clean it up a little bit. Okay. Open our quilt back up and just check to make sure that everything is fitting properly here and laying flat. And I'm going to go ahead and clip these these tails off. Make sure you're clipping the right end and you're clipping the tails and not the... Clip them to about 1/4 inch. And then I just open them up. Isn't that nice? Really beautiful seam in there. And I'll put a pin or two just to hold them in place to keep it from shifting. And I start stitching back a little bit, just stitching over some of the stitching I've already put in. So right over, and again, back my way out in reverse. And there's a single fold binding. Okay, to tack the binding on the back, this is what we start out with. It looks like this. And you're going to just fold the raw edge in about 1/4 inch and fold it over to the back. So you have a finished edge on the quilt. I'm going to work my way up to the corner, and you treat the corners the same way. You fold the raw edge in and then bring this to the back side. And you can use pins or you can use clips. It's your choice. And the corner is the same way. I fold the raw edge inside, as you can see here, and then I fold this down. And this is what we have ready to stitch. Okay. I apologize, I'm left-handed, but I think you will totally get this. This is another area where thread matters. Again, signature 60 weight. I have loaded up in the needle, and I use a milliner's needle. I will plant the needle in the edge of the binding, kind of tucking it down so it hides, and catch the quilt, and then come up the binding, and you'll have nice and visible stitches with this fine 60 weight signature cotton. One of the things that people will say is that double fold binding lasts longer than single fold. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because once fabric wears out, it wears out. And with single fold binding, at least I have the extra fabric so that I can replace the binding. And this is just so simple. It's headache free. And I catch the quilt, travel up, and there you can see the stitches. Just really, really nice. Nice fine thread, strong, and it's made in the USA. It's manufactured here in the United States. So that's it for my little techniques. I hope you enjoyed them, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.